भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन यमुना तीर विहारी
मन यमुना तीर विहारी
भज मन यमुना तीर विहारी
मन यमुना तीर विहारी
भज मन राधा चेतोहारी
मन राधा चेतोहारी
भज मन राधा चेतोहारी
मन राधा चेतोहारी
भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन राधे गोविंदा
मन राधे गोविंदा
भज मन गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
मन गोवर्धन गिरिधारी
भज मन वृंदावन संचारी
मन वृंदावन संचारी
भज मन यमुना तीर विहारी
मन यमुना तीर विहारी
भज मन राधा चेतोहारी
मन राधा चेतोहारी
भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
मन राधे 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 गोविंदा
भज मन राधे गोविंदा
मन राधे गोविंदा
भज मन राधे गोविंदा
मन राधे गोविंदा
भज मन राधे गोविंदा बोलिए राधा बाबर कृष्ण चंद्र भगवान की जय सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। श्री कृष्ण शरणं मम श्री कृष्ण शरणं मम श्री कृष्ण शरणं मम
Hari Om everyone. Can you all see me and hear me clearly? Good. So we will be continuing with our third discourse on this particular chapter or particular topic, which is ātmabodha. So after we begin with our invocations, Brahmacharini Divya will take 10 minutes to explain 2 shlokas. Then Brahmachari Hari Chaitanya will explain for next 10 minutes. Then I will dive deeper into those 2 shlokas. Today I will be cutting it short about 15 minutes ahead of time. So it will not go all the way till 7, till 6:45, because then I have to quickly change all the settings and get to the Jnana Yajna, which I have promised to the New Jersey Center, which is on Guru Stotram, and then continue there. So, double dhamaka today. So, let us begin without wasting much time so that we can capture as much as possible. So, let us begin. सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः Before we begin, I would like to ask Brahmachari Hari Chaitanya to lead us in lead and repeat of the 5th and 6th shloka, if I'm not wrong.
अज्ञानकलुषं जीवम्
1 second, Hari. Let me add. Oops. Okay. Yes.
अज्ञानकलुषं जीवम्
Ajnanakalusham jivam
ज्ञानाभ्यासाद् विनिर्मलम्
jnanabhyasad vinirmalam
कृत्वा ज्ञानं स्वयं नश्येत्
कृत्वा ज्ञानं स्वयं नश्येत्
जलं कतकरेणुवत्
जलं कतकरेणुवत्
संसारः स्वप्नतुल्यो हि
संसारस्वप्नतुल्यो हि
रागद्वेषादिसङ्कुलः
रागद्वेषादिसङ्कुलः
स्वकाले सत्यवद्भाति
स्वकाले सत्यवद्भाति
प्रबोधे सत्यसद्भवेत्
प्रबोधे सत्यसद्भवेत्
Swamiji, may I begin?
One second. No? I have to add you the spotlight, then you can begin.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm assuming everyone can hear me well. Hari Om. So Jivam Ajnana Kalusham. So the egocentric self is described as defiled by ignorance. Kritva Vinirmalam. Having made pure, how? Jnana abhyasa. So by constant practice of self-knowledge. Jnanam swayam nashyet. So the self-knowledge itself then disappears. And the analogy given is jalam kataka renavata. Just as the powder of the kataka nut is applied to the water. So far from verse 2 and including up to this verse, number 5, we are given the importance and nature of self-knowledge. We saw that knowledge is like fire, that it's a direct cause and not action is a direct cause for liberation. Then we saw knowledge is like light, that it is the only way to resolve ignorance. We saw that light is like the sun, that the knowledge doesn't create or make anything, and that the self is naturally revealed when the clouds are removed. Now, this verse talks about what happens to that self-knowledge at the end. And here it says that the very last thing after self-knowledge has accomplished what it's supposed to be doing, it too is thrown out. And this is a remarkable statement to make, saying that at the very end, you take the Shastras and all the self-knowledge and you get rid of that as well, which is quite shocking. We don't hear that anywhere else. So we'll understand why that's the significance of that. So let's start with where we are as a jiva right now, because that's where the shloka begins. Our journey begins with this mind-intellect equipment. And of all the animate and inanimate things that are in the world, to be born as a human with this mind and intellect equipment is a privilege. Because it is this equipment only that is capable of becoming independent of its animalistic tendencies, the ability to control and regulate its emotions, to build convictions of higher vision, and even investigate itself so thoroughly that it can negate itself. No other being has the capacity to do that. So this journey is accomplished by adhering to the pointers given by our Shastras and through constant practice, abhyasa. So with each round of practice and investigation, we're removing layer after layer of that which is not me, that which is not permanent. So here, the description given of who we are as a jiva is defined as ajnana kalusham, defiled by ignorance. What we lack is the understanding of who we are, and instead we identify with limited, impermanent conditions. And the most dearest to us is this mind-intellect equipment. And we can definitely tell how closely we're related to it by the very language we use. We say, I'm depressed, not this is sadness. We say, I'm hangry. This is not hunger. Or this is hunger. We don't say this is hunger. We say, I'm rejected when an idea is not good. So you can hear in our language the amount of identification we have with our mind-intellect equipment. So I seemingly am distorted by that which I'm identified with. So the example given by Gurudev is how our reflection is so distorted by the mala of the mirror and not me. So when the ugliness of the reflection is fixed, and it's only fixed when the surface is straightened or destroyed. And in our case, our mind needs to be straightened, cleaned, purified, and our identification with it has to weaken and be destroyed. Now, what happens at the pinnacle of such cleaning? When the mind is cleaned of all false notions and made absolutely steady, it becomes very still, almost as if you can say there is no mind. And we have to be careful of this phrase, no mind. We don't want to mistake it with the state that Bodha Marga says no mind. Here we're talking about a sadhana. It's not the ultimate state. So let's understand a little bit about this. Mind is a mere flow of thought, right? We realize that what we are thinking of is unreal. The thoughts itself are unreal. And so when we come to that understanding through the process of negation, our mind starts to quiet. And so this is equivalent to removing the clouds instead of making knowledge. This is the removal process. And this is called jnana abhyas. Now, what's the difference between, let's say, deep sleep and meditation? Well, my mind, doesn't have flow of thoughts then either. The problem is that in deep sleep, our experience is deep tamas, and which is a product of ignorance. Whereas in meditation, we are actively engaging in the process of negating our identity and understanding what is revealed after that removal of false identities. And we'll learn a little bit more about this negation process starting from the next verse onward. So I'm not going to go into that quite a bit. But at this point, we can come up with an objection. There seems to be a contradiction. You tell me on one hand that meditation is almost a state of no mind. I'm negating, and I want to become very still and steady. And at the same time, you're telling me I have to assert that which I'm real. So the knowledge of the self is what is actively being contemplated upon in the seat of meditation. So isn't the contemplation of the knowledge a type of thought, and identification with the body a type of thought? You're telling me one has to be negated, one has to be kept. Like, aren't you giving me false, contradictory statement there? What do I do at the seat of meditation? Our ancestors know us better than we know ourselves. And that is why here specifically, they've given us the analogy of the Kataka nut. So the process is that in India, this particular nut is used to clean drinking water, especially during the monsoon season. And it has the ability to form a molecular net, and it starts to sink. As it sinks, it pulls all other impurities along with it and settles at the bottom. Then the clean water is decanted, and the nut powder and the impurities it brought with it are both tossed out. Now we're coming to that special statement made. Both are tossed out. And one thing to note, it is important to wait. You can't throw it out before it's done its job. You have to wait until it's completely settled and pulled all the impurities out with it. So in this case, water represents the all-present, already illumined self. It has always been there. The mud here is all of the false identifications I have as the PFT, feeler, perceiver, thinker, and the individual jiva, ego. The Kataka nut powder here represents that self-knowledge that has the ability to uproot these false notions and point me in the direction of the reality. Once I have become established in this identity, I've removed the false ones, I've sat at the seat of meditation, and I've come to abide in that knowledge, then I have no need for that knowledge anymore. It has thoroughly done its job. Then I can say I can throw out both the impurities and the knowledge which helped me purify myself. Only after we have completely established ourselves. That is the beauty and power of which our Shastras are saying that what I'm able to give you are tools and pointers. What is already real is real. You don't need principles, you don't need theories, you don't need someone to believe it in or not. It is already is. It's a principle. These are aids and tools to get us there, and it has special function that way. And then it can be removed as well. Swamiji, I do understand that I might have taken up all of my 10 minutes at this point. Would you like me to keep going or pass it to Hari?
Yes, continue. Finish it.
Okay. So the next verse here is now the process where we understand what is this process of negation. How do I actually now start to walk that journey of negation all the way to the awareness of what is real? So here, samsaraha raga dveshadi sankulaha. So this samsara, this world, which is described as having full of attachments, aversions, and so on. And the analogy is given, swapna tulyaha hi. It is indeed like a dream. What? Why? How? Here it says, satyavat bhati. It appears to be real, swakale, in its duration. Prabodhe sati, when you are awake, bhavet asat, it becomes unreal. So here we're saying that right now, all of our false identifications our false perception of who we are. And as a result of that false identification, we are full of desires, wants, because we're trying to break out of that limitation. We have all sorts of attachments. And with attachments comes likes and dislikes, aversions. All of those things come as a package deal as soon as we have wrong identification. All of this is a dream and appears real so long as that dream continues. But once we pay attention and we realize how impermanent these are, and we abide in that self-knowledge as we described before, true wisdom dawns on us, and it's like waking up. And once we wake up, we realize everything that we had experienced is just a dream. It's all false. This is true reality. What I was experiencing was false. And it takes a balanced and controlled mind. Again, all of the bhakti yoga, karma yoga, all of the things that we do as actions help us bring our mind to that calm, steady state in order to sit and abide in that true knowledge in the seat of meditation. And once that sthita has happened, then we can understand that all of this is unreal and the self is the only truth and reality. So I will end here and I will pass it to Brahmachari Hari.
Video. So we find ourselves in a peculiar situation here, where if we look at both of these shlokas, the first one is concluding and wrapping up on a concept, and the sixth shloka is starting on a new concept. So we're concluding here where knowledge eradicates ignorance. That topic is being wound up for the moment here. And we're starting with the unreality of the world, with the example of the dream being given. So starting in this fifth shloka, before then, let's see where we've come so far in the past two shlokas. We've seen that knowledge is the only direct means to liberation, the only direct means. We've seen that action cannot destroy ignorance, and that when ignorance is destroyed, Atma reveals itself without any other help because Atma is self-luminous. That's how far we've come. Now the glory of knowledge has been given at length. We see that there's no other way around it. If we have that desire to be liberated, if we wake up to the fact that I need to be liberated, don't want to be encompassed in this idea that I'm this jiva any longer, knowledge is a must. What kind of knowledge? Knowledge of what my true nature is, that supreme self. But then the question can arise, what is the process to utilize this knowledge to get there? What do I have to do? And it's given jnana abhyasa. And what is this jnana abhyasa? It's not that aham brahmasmi is some mantra that I repeat to myself. That constant abhyasa of saying it again and again doesn't make that happen. I wish it were so, that would be much easier, but the process given is much more difficult. And I'd like to draw your attention to Pujya Gurudev's commentary here. I'll read one paragraph that is setting us up for the rest of ātmabodha, what kind of mindset to have as we study it. Speaking on jnana abhyasa, Gurudev writes, the process of negating our identifications with the false matter envelopments and asserting our divine spiritual nature constitutes the art of meditation. In this process is explained exhaustively in the verses that follow in this very textbook. Here, Pujya Gurudev is completely unambiguous. There is no question as to the importance of jnana abhyasa, what that jnana abhyasa should be also, and that is constantly negating for myself anything I am attached to, thinking I am that, meaning this equipment of body, mind, intellect, constantly telling myself through logic that I am not that. And a prakriya is given as well, saying that this is the process you must follow to get to that point where this knowledge is understood, purifying yourself through this process, getting rid of your attachments and aversions. Now, this is a very difficult sadhana to take up. I was reading a BuzzFeed article recently. It talked about getting out of your comfort zone. What are the things you can do to get out of your comfort zone? It said move to a city where no one knows you, meet people that you've never met before, pick a career that you have no skill set in. These were questionable, some of these points, but pick a career you have no skill set in, things like that. But really looking at it, are we ever out of our comfort zone? As long as I'm going by my likes and dislikes, enveloped in this body, mind, and intellect, that is my comfort zone. I've gotten used to being tossed around and they're getting happy, getting sad. Even when I'm sad, I know it's coming sometimes and I wallow in that. But essentially, I'm still in this matter envelopment here. That is my comfort zone, which is why Puja Gurudev in his teachings, whether introductory, advanced, this emphasis on negating my attachment to the body, mind, intellect was a hallmark of every one of his teachings. Before I think Swamiji was traveling one time when I was in Balavihar. So the adult sessions, they'd watch Puja Gurudev's Gita lectures. And with so many lectures week by week, with a break in between sometimes, it gets confusing. You know, which lecture did we see? Which one is next? Like that. So they were asking people, congregation, like, which one did we watch last time to show this time? And I swear one man raised his hand and he said, yeah, in the last lecture, Gurudev was pointing at the BMI chart with his pointer, is what he said. And they said, dude, that's every single one. So that is such an emphasis in every one of his teachings, that ruthlessly looking at this equipment, seeing why it's not me, logically convincing myself of it, and it's not a one-time thing, but something to be constantly done. Abhyasa constitutes that practice again, until it sinks in doubtlessly. Now, one more doubt can come up looking at the shloka thus far, that I have to inundate myself with this idea of negation, that I am not these things, I am that Brahman, I am Atma. But then, if there's a thought that I've had for Janmas put together, that I am this body, I am this body. Having this thought of I am Atma is simply one other thought. This thought of I am the body was a conditioned thought that I had through this mind. This thought of I am Atma is also a conditioned thought that I have through this mind. How is it that being convinced of this leads me to realization? It's just a thought after all. But then we have to go back to the previous siddhantas given so far in ātmabodha, even though it's early on, that Atma is self-luminous, meaning there's no other thought needed once it's understood to substantiate that. If I'm looking at a glass, for instance, the two thoughts that come up are, one, this is a glass, and the illuminating thought, I am seeing this glass. With the Brahmakara Vritti, there is simply Brahman, I am that. It needs no other thought to illuminate that. Therefore, the Kataka nut, as it falls after it's done its purpose, it's not that this thought is a burden anymore. It's another conditioned thought that exists. That thought simply falls away as well, understanding I am simply that Brahman. Now, when we look at this next shloka here, it starts by telling us that the unreality of the world is ironically what we consider to be the most real. For me, what is more real than what I like and what I don't like? That dictates every action that I do, every thought that I have. So the first question to ask myself then is, what do I consider to be real? And that is what I give the most space in my mind for. What do I think about most on a daily basis? That's what I consider real. My familiar relationships, my occupation and the problems and the triumphs that come with that. What my goals are for the near future, for the far future, all of that constitute what my reality is. Because in turn, I spend my time fixing these things, patching these things up, going for perfection in these things. That's what is taken up by my life. That is my reality. And here we're seeing anything that arises from these likes and dislikes is only unreal. And the example given here is so powerful, something that can stick with us so much vichara can be done. And that's the example of a dream. When I wake up from a dream, no matter how good it is, no matter how awful it is. Right now, I'm a brahmachari. In my dream, I could be the CEO of a company and my helipad lands on my building and I walk down, they say, sir, sir, sir. That's how everyone treats me. But I wake up and I find that, oh, that's not true. And I frown a little bit. Oh, I wish that was the case. But when I woke up, did I have to convince myself that that's not true? Did I have to go through a process? Was I really that? No. I didn't have people working for me. Then coming to think, oh, I am brahmachari hari. It was instantly I understood that. Was it something that was doubtless? After taking my shower, did I think to myself, no, wait, was I really that CEO then? Did I go back and revert to it? Oftentimes, we don't even remember what the dreams were after a few minutes. We can't really go back and see them vividly either. So it's doubtless, it's only temporary. Same way here, this ajnana that I've been enveloped in, going and satiating my desire, staying away from what I don't like, that is but temporary, not permanent. And once this knowledge dawns, I doubtlessly know that is not me. That was never me. That was chasing all of these things. That's how fleeting these unreal things are, like a dream. All the while I'm in it, it seems so real. If I'm being chased by a tiger in my dream, I wake up in a full sweat looking around for a moment. That does happen. While I'm in this envelopment of thinking this world is real, it seems so dangerous. Every situation that's sad brings me so much sorrow. Every small triumph lifts me up so high. That's the nature of Maya. That's what it is. Getting out of that and understanding that's not the truth is a difficult sadhana to come to, only done by jnana abhyasa once again. Now, when it comes to what is the process to come to this point, to end with, I'm not in a position in my spiritual path yet to give words of wisdom to you. I know that, you know that also. But starting with what my vichara is at this point in my sadhana, I can share that at least. The point to come to eventually is this body, mind, intellect that I'm working with are mere tools to get me to a certain point. Being influenced by their likes and dislikes is not the way to do it. My body should hold as much importance to me as the next person's body does. Eventual point to come to at the highest level. Seeing it as an object. The lowest level then now, sadhana I can take up is every situation, deal with it objectively, though my equipment is being used. For example, whether it's a CEO or a president of a nation, they have a chief of staff. That chief of staff works as a proxy, sitting in meetings for that boss, being the eyes and the ears of the company, and they come back to the boss and report. When they report to this boss, if it's, I was in a meeting with foolish people and they said XYZ, if he starts with that, he's already coloring the situation with his own lenses there. His job is not that. His job is to give faithfully the facts of what happened objectively, and whether the people are smart, dumb, whatever, the boss will decide that based on the information. That's not the role of this person here. Similarly, in my spiritual progress, analyzing and seeing situations and being aware of certain people's character traits, that's necessary, yes. But that objectivity in every situation, not looking at it directly from my likes and dislikes of a person or a situation, but seeing the situation as it is my starting point. If I can't be objective with how my tools are used, how do I view these very BMI equipments as objects in the first place? To get to that point, starting with interactions, I must be objective. So along with jnana abhyasa of negating every situation where these tools I'm attached to and think this is being, and thinking this whole world is real, at the same time in every situation, looking at the objective facts of how things turned out, how my tools reacted, that gets me to a responding pattern where I'm no longer tossed this way and that way. That is all I have, Swamiji. Hariyo.
Thank you both. As rightly pointed, this fifth shloka is concluding a very important aspect, and that which has been repeated emphatically through these 5 shlokas. Jnanam vina mokshaha na siddhyati. That without jnana, there is no possibility of moksha. And all other sound bites wherein we say or we hear that there are several paths to moksha is not logically possible. That which we are calling as or looking at as moksha is the liberation, liberating oneself from this limited identity and identifying with my true nature and abiding in it. That is what we call as moksha. When the pointer is given as tattvamasi, I do the tatpada vichara, then the tvampada vichara, then I see the aikyatva, the oneness, and then abide in it. That knowledge alone removes the ajnana. So in the 5th shloka, the example given is Kataka Renuvat. There is this, if the Kataka seed powder, if we find it difficult to understand, when we were in NCC, which is like IROTC or IRTC, one of those in the college, where we used to go out to camps, we had natural source of water and we picked that water up and we were given a small packet of alum. उसको क्या बोलते हैं, फिटकरी? हाँ. So we tie it with a string. It usually comes with a string, and if not, we tie it with a string and then run it in that water for a couple of minutes, which is what the Kataka Renu powder also does. So as you drop it, it attaches itself to all the mud particles, not visible. So it settles down at the bottom, and then you pour that water out into another container with another filter cloth kind of a thing, and then boil it to remove any other presence, and then it is now safe for drinking. A similar abhyasa that has to be done is called Ajnana Kalusham Jivam Jnana Abhyasat Vinirmalam. That one has to engage in Jnana Abhyasa. Now, what is Jnana Abhyasa? Jnana Abhyasa has 3 steps to it: Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. At what stage of this Abhyasa does realization happen? For a qualified student, the one who has done the pariksha of the outside world and has come to a clear understanding, pariksha lokan karmachitan, through their karma they have evaluated the outside field of experience with things and beings, including our own body, mind and intellect. That which I am seeking, the purnatva that I am seeking, cannot be found in these things, and I know it for a fact. Therefore, I am not distracted with the outside world, however attractive it may sound or seem itself like. But I am not distracted by it. Such a student who has thus come to this understanding, this conclusion that what I am seeking is not out there, such one comes to the Guru Maharaj, and Guru Maharaj gives them the instruction. Shravana happens. As soon as that Shravana, right there, Jnana happens for Uttamadhikari. Uttamottam Adhikari, as soon as that Shravana happens, Jnana happens and moksha happens. Now the example, classic example given is Karna is searching for his biological parents for all his life. So just before the war, though Bhagavan Krishna promptly applies it as a strategy, he says, you have been searching for your mother, for your biological parents. Why don't you ask Kunti Devi if she had a 6th son? And if so, who is it? 5 are already known. So why don't you go ask? So there's an appointment set, and he goes to meet Kunti Devi and he asks his question. Then Kunti Devi says, when he is asking for the 6th child, mother, do you have a 6th child? Who is it? Then she says, Tat Tvam Asi. She says, that thou art. You are that. Now, as soon as he hears this from Kunti Devi, is there something unusual that is happening that he started levitating, or he started having a halo around his head, or suddenly titan and there is a change? Nothing. As soon as that knowledge dawned, the ignorance has been wiped away, and you know that you are that. But for many of us, we cut short the process. What is the process? How do we attain to that Parama Vairagya? Shama, some dam in Dama, Uparama, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhanam. This has to be very, very strong. Without having invested our time into this, if we have jumped directly to Shravana because it is available, Zoom barabar Zoom, it is available. We have not invested our time into developing that Chitta Shuddhi, Chitta Ekagrata and Paripurna Vairagya. And we have jumped into Shravana. So what happens? The same thing which Bhagwan Naradji asks the Parshadas when the Dhundukari, the first Bhagavat Sapta that was conducted, Dhundukari gets liberated, whereas everybody sitting there, nobody gets the Vaikuntha Darshana. He says, how come? Like everybody, Shravanam tu sarve kritam. Everybody has done that Shravana. What is the difference? Then he says, Parshadas say that though everybody has done Shravana, only Dhundukari affirmed it with his Manana Nididhyasana. That it was not just on a Tuesday evening that you quickly try finding the book of ātmabodha somewhere on the center table under a pile of things, and then suddenly pick your earplugs, earphones, and then sit, and then chautha tha ki panchva tha ki chata tha, which shloka are we on? I mean, at least here it is not that you have to prepare and present, like in other classroom environments we have. Here it is mostly the monologue that is happening, and maybe later question answers will happen. But to continue this thought even after, and to stir tat shravanam, tat kathanam, anyonyam tat prabodhanam, that nothing else as a gossip, but even if we come and sit and gather, even as a group, this is the vichara that is constantly, consistently happening. That should be the strength. That should be the motive. That should be the direction. Now, what is Nididhyasana? Nididhyasana is the Vedantic way of saying meditation. Why is meditation required? Meditation does not yield moksha. As soon as with that Shravana, the Spashtata, the Jnana has happened, moksha has happened. Liberation has happened. Nididhyasana is required to remove all the Viparita Bhavana. That there are these erroneous patterns that which we have been caught up in. Why? Aneka janma samprapta. These habitual errors have been there for janma janmantara. So inevitably the system, the body, mind and intellect, the way it is wired, it goes back to its practice, whatever it has been in practice. So to break that pattern, then what we do is Nididhyasana. Okay, that is one step clarity. Now the second step clarity which is indicated here, he says in the second line of the fifth shloka, Krutva Jnanam Swayam Nashyet. Now here, though Divya said mind is destroyed, what does here that mean is not that the mind as an equipment is destroyed. there is vritti jnana, because the confusion is in the buddhi, and by this shravana there is the illumination that happens, there is the vritti jnana. That vritti jnana drops. Why? That vritti jnana's purpose was to point that you are not this reflection, you are the source of this reflection. As soon as my attention is shifted, where I realize, oh, I am the source, then the reflected consciousness and the attention to that reflected consciousness is dropped. That is what here it means when it says, Kritva jnanam swayam nashyet. That the abidance has happened. That subjective understanding and abidance in that understanding. Therefore, it is knowing is being. So, Kritva jnanam swayam nashyet jalam kataka renuvat. Now, moving into the next wave of thought. Samsarha swapna tulyo hi raga dveshadi sankulaha swakale satyavad bhati prabodhe satya sad bhavet. See, when we look at this jiva, the jiva is in this avidya, ignorance. Avidya has several ways, several names for it. One of the names is Maya Shakti also. Now, when we look at it from the standpoint of Maya Shakti has two natures. I mean, again, Maya Shakti is defined in various ways. Trigunatmika Maya, then Ichha Jnana Kriya Shakti is Maya. Then we'll take the third definition today. The third definition is Vikshepa and Avarana Shakti. So what happens when that, when this creation, the surge of creation happens, is this Maya Shakti is projecting this creation. So this creation is nothing but only in a reality, only in its projection. Meaning it appears real and it can be validated only if it is a projected reality. So it should be a child's play, because if it were only step one wherein that Vikshepa has happened, then it should be easy to get over, easy to understand that okay, Mayeva Sakalam Jatam, that everything is born out of this mind. It is projected. But what happens is the second step. The second stage of Adhyasa is once the Vikshepa happens, Avarana, confusion, covered. Now what happens in this covering? That which is Anatma is assumed as Atma. Starting from Aham Dehoham, Aham Feelingsoham, Aham Respectoham, Disrespectoham, all of these, body, mind and intellect level, I am thoroughly identified with this entity, assuming that I am the instrument. That which is the projected reality is assumed as my very nature. And how is that? This is Raga Dveshadi Sankulaha. And then there is this caught up with the snared in the web of Raga Dvesha, likes and dislikes. In fact, the very method of Karma Yoga Siddhanta, the Karma Yoga attitude of functioning in the field of action, is given so that each one of the sadhaka applies this Karma Yoga Siddhanta to get over, get past our own likes and dislikes. We are not supposed to be engaging into an activity or a responsibility because I like or to avoid that which I dislike, but in spite of my likes and dislikes, to perform because it is my responsibility. But we are ensnared into that raga dveshadi sankulaha. Swakale satyavat bhati. And it is just like the dream. Now, in a dream, Gurudev goes elaborately for next 10-15 minutes explaining, an accident, and then finally he goes through a gory details of it, and then suddenly he says he fell, and only to realize that he fell off his bed, that all that which he had assumed, panicked about, was only in his mental projection. As soon as that happens, that you realize that you have woken up, that which appeared to be very real, you panicked. Swakale satyavad bhati, prabodhe sati asat bhavet. Prabodhe sati, as soon as I wake up, asatyavat bhati, I clearly, distinctly know that there is no reality, no sense of permanency to it. Similarly, to see this projected reality beyond the avarana, beyond the confusion of assuming that which is anatma as atma. Now it has a repercussion. That which is atma, that which is the reality, that which is the nitya vastu, because we say I do not have a direct experience through my organs of perception and action, through my processing called buddhi, therefore that is completely an alien topic, that which we say, oh, it is an abstract topic. Why? Because my buddhi cannot fathom, my buddhi cannot capture it, therefore it is abstract. That which is my true nature, I say that it is abstract and avoid. That which is not my true nature, I keep holding on to it. This viveka, when it is strong, what should it yield? It should yield complete deha tadatmyata, the identification with this body, mind and intellect, disconnect with it. I'll stop here. We will continue in our next week. Yes, 10 more minutes, it would have been good, but I'll wind up here. We'll catch up in the next week's satsang. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Take care, everyone. See you in next satsang.